The Israelis pressed on into the Golan and encountered no Soviet forces because President Johnson had raised the stakes.
He asked McNamara what distance from the Syrian coast the fleet, American fleet, was at the time, and he said 100 miles.
It was steaming toward Gibraltar on a training exercise. We turned it around.
And the president said, move them to within 50 miles, knowing that the fleet was shadowed by Soviet electronic ships, and they would know them directly. That was also part of the message.
So our secret invasion by the back door never happened. Thank God for that.
The Israeli government waited until their forces had achieved their objective before giving the order to halt.
A colleague of mine from the Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem called me to give me the text of an agreed statement on ceasefire.
Israel accepts any proposal made by General Bull for the implementation of the Security Council ceasefire resolution and the arrangements for the supervision of the ceasefire.
I read this statement, slowly translating it from Hebrew into English, and that was the end of the war.
In 6 days, the armed forces had quadrupled the territory Israel controlled. From Syria, they had taken the Golan Heights. From Jordan, the West Bank and the Old City of Jerusalem. From Egypt, Gaza and the Sinai. With so much land to trade, Israel had its best chance ever for peace. Israelis flocked to the Old City. To them, the victory was a deliverance from destruction. The Israeli cabinet was determined to hold on to Jerusalem, and for the time being, the West Bank. But in exchange for peace, they were willing to give back the Golan Heights to Syria and the Sinai Desert to Egypt. The foreign minister told the Americans of Israel's offer.
When I presented these to a meeting headed by Dean Rusk and Goldberg and Sisko, in general they were astonished by the fact that we were clearly not in a mood of annexation.
That was, we believed then, a rather remarkable initiative on the part of the Israelis, because we were operating on the assumption, Eban had told us some days before, we are not interested in territory.
That week, President Johnson was hosting a summit for Soviet Prime Minister Kosygin. Eager to appear as peacemakers at the UN, the two leaders had a peace resolution drafted. In Cairo, it was scrutinized by the Foreign Ministry. This was another turning point in the Arab-Israeli conflict.
We concluded that this proposal was the best we were likely to get. We advised the foreign minister to accept it.
The minister looked at it differently.
When the resolution was proposed, Israel was ready to accept it. But Egypt's foreign minister was utterly against the resolution, because it indirectly implied Israel's right to exist, and he wouldn't have that at all. Israel, of course, did not want any resolution that only said, pull back your forces, but didn't recognize Israel's existence. So this was the problem.
But recognizing Israel was not on Nasser's agenda. Following Egypt's defeat, he had more immediate problems at home.
Abdul Nasser said, "We've lost. There is no point in staying on. I shall resign."
I have decided to resign totally and finally from all official positions. I shall return to private life. I shall perform my duties like any other citizen.
After his broadcast, crowds surrounded the presidential palace and begged Nasser to stay.
Most of the demonstrations were genuine. People really were upset. But something else happened too. The party boss told members to gather and listen to the speech. After the speech, they took to the streets and chanted, "We want Nasser, no leader but Nasser."
Nasser stayed on as president. His old friend Marshal Amer became the scapegoat. He refused to resign, so Nasser had him arrested. He died in custody. It was said in Cairo he was suicided. Shortly after, Nasser rejected the Soviet-American peace plan.
Nasser could not bring himself to accept the peace plan. He was a hero to the Arabs. He couldn't be seen negotiating with the Israelis.
3 months later, Arab leaders met to formulate a unified policy towards Israel. Nasser, still the idol of the Arab world, was subdued.
I found him a different man. I noticed from the outset that he felt a great sense of guilt.
The Arabs agreed to reject any compromise with Israel.
The decision by the Arab countries not to negotiate with Israel, not to make peace with Israel, and not to recognize Israel.
With no recognition, no negotiation, and no peace, it was only a matter of time before war would break out again.